see. Islam, peace, love, and prosperity to all of humanity on Midgard, planet Earth. So today we'll be covering the rights of indigenous people, parts of the United Nations Charter, actually just the preamble, just to show and prove some things in regards to the so I'll put it this way. There's lots of misconceptions and misinformation out there being taught by the VHS Moors, the DVD Moors, but it ain't just Moors, it's also Europeans like what's his name? Jordan Maxwell, David Icke, etc. Loose Change. I don't know if you all ever seen that short documentary back in the days called Zeitgeist. And they just been fueling lots of misinformation, thinking now that in hindsight, all that was actually conspiracy theories, because they would have you believe that the United Nations was established by the Rothschilds and the Rockefellers, and it was the establishment of the United Nations was in order was to take over the world and the New World Order and the Illuminati, and basically what I'm seeing now is that they have been taking us or making an attempt to take us out of or keep us from international law and dealing with the United Nations. There's always an agenda. So now we can see, based on the language that's being used in the United Nations, that it's not necessarily so. So if the United Nations are the devil and they're the Illuminati and they're trying to imprison everybody and kill off everybody and the New World Order and all these things, then tell me why Article 1 says what it says. Because Article 1, can you all see my screen? I suppose so, because I can see it on my phone.
Yes.
Because Article 1 spells out the purpose of the United Nations. So all these other characters that I just mentioned, they had their narrative as to what the purpose was for the United Nations. Well, let's see what the United Nations themselves have to say, right? So Article 1 says the purposes of the United Nations are: 1, to maintain international peace and security. That's real demonic, isn't it? I mean, that's actually the exact opposite of what we've been told about the United Nations. Oh, and by the way, I didn't introduce ourselves as AMPAG, and this is our weekly Sunday classes in which we go over treaty classes. Wednesdays, we have Wild Wednesdays. And I want to thank everyone for showing up. The ones on the call and the viewers at home. I'll continue. So to maintain international peace and security. And to that end, to take effective collective measures for the prevention and removal of threats. So they're trying to prevent and remove any form of threats to peace. And for the suppression of acts of aggression or other breaches of the peace, encroaching on other states and their rights, espionage, war, what do they call it? Use of force is the term, right? And to bring about by peaceful means and in conformity with the principles of justice. Isn't that what they say? What they say right there? The principles of justice. What that sound like? What's our 5 principles? Can somebody tell me our 5 principles? I'm not gonna say it. I'm gonna let somebody else say it. I'm gonna get y'all participate.
Peace, freedom, and justice.
Right. These are 5 principles. So they are highlighting one of our 5 principles, which is the 5th one, justice, right? When nothing else prevails, when love, truth, peace, and freedom doesn't prevail, justice must take place. And justice is Jesus. And justice is also the scimitar, right? Which signifies beheading. Well, of course, that could be viewed in 2 ways: physical beheading, like literally beheading someone, or beheading someone with the pen, right? Or if you're beheading, if you're partaking in that activity with the pen, then you're not beheading one person, you're beheading an entire nation of people, right? Because when you're dealing with the pen, you're dealing with peoples, not just one individual. It affects everybody, whether for the good or for the bad. It affects everybody, whether it be a foreign nation or your internal citizenry, your nationals, etc. Okay, so it says with the principles of peace, justice, and international law, right? This is the other half that wasn't told. Adjustment or settlement of international disputes or situations which might lead to a breach of the peace, i.e. Ukraine and Russia. So even though it might be going on, it doesn't mean that they're doing things in conformity with international law, primarily just cogence, the preemptory norms of international law, which deals with state rights and human rights. So, you know, what you would say is that Russia is being belligerent because they were told to stand down by the United Nations, and they say, no, I'm going at them anyway. So now Ukraine has a case going against them for, and what's the charges? Genocide. And more than likely they'll win. And many other nations, European nations, have jumped on the bandwagon on behalf of Ukraine, backing Ukraine with a document called a Declaration of Intervention, falling under the principles of erga omnes partes. So basically what they're doing is backing Ukraine and becoming part and parcel to that case, which is the same thing that we would be doing whenever we get ready to take the United States to the ICJ, which is going to be a fascinating case, and it's going to open up a can of worms. The Moors, the NBCs, the sleeping Moors will be glued to the TV, because you can best believe it will make the news. It will make the news. And even if it doesn't make the news commercially, we still have our own media outlets, YouTube, social media across the board. So it's going to make the news, whether it's on social media or it's on national TV or both.
Okay.
But
I just wanted to meet. I don't want you cussing.
Brother Fahim, mute your mic, please. I appreciate it. Number 2, to develop friendly relations amongst nations, right? So we have to develop friendly relations with the United States. And we don't have no choice. Why? Because we're working with a document called the Treaty of Peace and Friendship, right? In which the 2 signatory powers are who? The United States of America and Morocco. We are the Moroccans, the landlords, they are the tenants. And you want to have friendly relations with your tenants. You know, you want your tenants happy so they can continue paying the rent. So why would you not come in and change unplug the toilet when you're called upon, or whatever issues they may be having in the home? You want to take care of those issues so that they can be happy in your rental, and they would continue renting and paying their rent every month. No problem. In order to accomplish that, you need friendly relations, i.e. peace and friendship. And it will be based on respect for the principles of equal rights and self-determination of peoples. So they have to accept and uphold our self-determination to establish our states and to take other appropriate measures to strengthen universal peace. It's all about peace. It starts off with peace, to maintain international peace and security. So, by the way, we just went over at least 2 of our principles, right? Justice and peace, right? Love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice. So peace, justice, those things promote freedom, love, right? Truth. None of this can happen without truth, which means the world is due for truth. There's gonna be a big time reset. There's gonna be a display, an international display of what the truth always was. So the secrets will be unveiled. And the prophet came to unveil the secrets way back in 1913. You see, that's why he puts his hand, we put our hands over our heart outside the breastcoat, whereas your Freemasonic demons, they would put their hands inside the breastcoat, signifying what? The hidden hand, the unrighteous path. Moors deal with the righteous path. We're here in the spirit of love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice. We went against those principles, which is why we failed in the first place, right? So when we rise back up, we have to come back to those higher principles. That's why the prophet was brought to us by Allah. In the end of times. What end of times? Well, he came during the time when the empire was fractured and falling apart. You see, to be a center. Did I finish the first one? Okay, let me finish the third one. 3, to achieve international cooperation in solving international problems of an economic, social, cultural, or humanitarian character, and in promoting and encouraging respect for human rights and for fundamental freedoms for all. There we go again, freedom. So we got 3 of them: love, truth, love, or we have peace, justice, and now we're talking about freedoms. I mean, the prophet was on to something, right? Or all without distinction as to race, sex, language, or religion. Because sex is an illusion, I mean, race is an illusion anyway. What is race? The human family is a race, subdivided into many different nations, none of which deal with crayon colors. These different nations are broken down based on their consanguinity in the land that they come from, i.e. Korea, Koreans, Brazilians, Brazil, Nigeria, Nigerians, British, Great Britain, right? Americans, and Moroccans, i.e. Morocco. I had to tell this brother yesterday, you can't spell Morocco without more, because he's trying to argue the fact that we're Americans. We keep arguing these points, and I don't understand why. Despite the fact that you would even turn around and say that this is al-Maghrib al-Aqsa, which literally means Morocco of the farthest west, yet you call it America. You got to get away from this. The same way where we want our NBCs to get away from the misnomers of Negroes, Blacks, and Coloreds, you too also must get away from the misnomer of the land, which the misnomer is America. The correct, original, organic name of the land is Morocco, not America, period. We've made that case in the last class, and I wasn't able to post it because for some reason the Mac computer won't access anything Google for whatever reason. So I'm kind of stuck with it, trying to figure out how to get it on YouTube. That's why you haven't seen it yet. So I've been having some problems here with these computers. 4, to be a center for harmonizing the actions of nations and the attainment of these common ends. What are the common ends? Well, peace, security, freedom, justice, etc. So just with that, with Article 1, which describes the purpose and the principles of the Charter of the United Nations, we already basically made the point clear from their own mouths, their own documents, what is the purpose of the United Nations. I haven't read anything here that says anything about enslaving all of humanity. I'm just saying. Now you might say, well, they're not going to say that directly. They're going to do that from an underhanded manner. Well, I mean, if we stand on what was written, which everybody else has been standing on what's been written, then it just is what it is. It has become res judicata, right? Well-settled principles in international law. You can't just go back and say, okay, well, no, we didn't mean that. We meant enslavement. Well, that's not what you wrote here. And this is not what other nations have been enforcing, such as the African nations or the nations in Al-Qibla. So let's go into the United Nations. This is a declaration. This document here that I just flashed is the Declaration on the Granting of Independence to Colonial Countries and Peoples. This is the decolonization document, Resolution 1514. We won't necessarily go over it, but I just happen to have it up. We created a law based on these principles that have become our internal law within our state, which deals with decolonization, because that's the purpose of the AMPAG, and WEPA. Is to force decolonization. We're not here for no other reason but to force decolonization. So here we are, the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples. But notice how they use these colors and these symbols and these little drawings. Like, doesn't that look indigenous-like, African-like, or whatever you might say? That's just an observation. All right. So the resolution adopted by the General Assembly on 13 September 2007, and it was signed by who? Barack H. Obama. United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous People, the General Assembly, taking note of the recommendation of the Human Rights Council contained in its resolution, how do you say that? Resolution 1 and 2 of 29 June 2006, by which the Council adopted the text of the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples. So they adopted the text, right? They adopted the text. Other Indigenous peoples have adopted the text. It is what it is. They can't come back and say, "Oh, never mind. No, that's not what we meant. That's just what we put out there on the floor, on the surface. But what we really meant was enslaving on everybody." No, that's not. Okay, Jordan Maxwell, David Icke, and everybody else, you've been wrong. Were you agents? What could I say? I don't know. Recalling its resolution 61-178 of 20 December 2006, by which it decided to defer consideration of an action on the declaration to allow time for further consultations thereon, and also decided to conclude its consideration before the end of the 61st session of the General Assembly, adopts the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples as contained in the annex to the present resolution. So the annex, which is basically the preamble, reads as follows: guided by the purposes and principles of the Charter of the United Nations. So what is the purposes and the principles of the Charter of the United Nations? To maintain international peace and security. So it says, guided by the purposes and principles of the Charter of the United Nations and good faith in the fulfillment of the obligations assumed by states, uppercase S, organic states in accordance with the Charter. That means that these types of states, uppercase states, organic states, has authority over lowercase states, which are what? International organizations. An international organization cannot supersede an organic state, and definitely not an organic Moroccan state, that's for sure. Why? Because of the treaties. The treaties are all Moroccan treaties, right? I could have shown something on the, it just hit me. I could show something on the, what is it, Article 122 of the Act of Algeciras, where it says that all arrangements, conventions, and agreements in which the Act of Algeciras basically supersedes all of them, which means it supersedes this, which means then that the rights of indigenous peoples and any other arrangement that comes from the United Nations Charter has to be in harmony with what? Our Moroccan laws, which is what? The Act of Algeciras. That's the point that I'm making. Guided by the purposes and principles of the Charter of the United Nations, in good faith in the fulfillment of the obligations assumed by states in accordance with the Charter, affirming that indigenous peoples, or we could also say affirming that the Moorish peoples, right, are equal to all other peoples, while recognizing the right of all peoples to be different, to consider themselves different, and to be respected as such. And we are different. We have a distinct identity. I challenge you. I would challenge any of you on the line or at home to tell me any other nation on planet Earth in which they wear the fez, and particularly the heads of state, the government officials. I would be waiting forever. We would have crickets because no one else wears the fezes and the turbans and the garbs. So we are a distinct people. So we are different from everyone else, period. We're not Africans. We don't wear loincloths and we don't wear dashikis. We wear pantaloons. Those are the hammer pants, right? The baggy Moorish hammer pants. The Moorish slippers. The good brother, the Haji, Amaru, he wore his Moorish slippers. I don't even know what you call them. I forgot what you call them. If anyone knows the name of it, please chime in. But he wore it to the inauguration, looking like Aladdin. That's what our culture and our style was. It was more like Aladdin, wearing the fezes and the turbans and the garbs. We're not Africans. We don't wear dashikis and loincloths and all that kind of stuff, okay? And we're not African booty scratchers. We're Moroccans. Affirming that indigenous peoples, and by the way, we can always, in this document, we can always replace the word indigenous for the word Moors, right? Because the Moors are the indigenous peoples. Affirming also that all peoples can contribute to the diversity and richness of civilization and cultures which constitute the common heritage of humankind. Contribute to the diversity and richness of civilizations and cultures. Who contributed to the diversity and richness of civilizations and cultures? Okay, let's answer it this way. So everybody's familiar with this website. This is RV Bay publication. And we got these proclamations, right? Like here, Atlanta City Council in honor of Moorish American Holy Week. So you've got these different cities. You got here Atlanta City. You got here Chicago, City of Chicago, North Carolina, etc., in which their local officials, such as Rahm Emanuel, mayor, he was the mayor under Obama, wrote a proclamation on behalf of the Moorish Americans. And what does it say? The Moorish Americans, whose ancient forefathers are the mothers and fathers of the human family. So this is what they're saying about us, except we're not Moorish Americans. But they're affirming, however, that we are the mothers and fathers of the human family. Okay, if that's the case, then what does this say? Affirming also that all people you see the code. All peoples. No, it's not all peoples. It's a specific peoples. The Moors. Affirming also that Moors contributed to the diversity and richness of civilizations and cultures, which constitute the common heritage of all of humankind. We are the mothers and fathers of civilization. We are the eldest. We are the direct descendants from Allah himself. That's why race is the human family. But within that family of humans, you only got one that's the eldest. Esau, right? Us, the Moors. We were here first. We've always been here. That's why the consanguinity comes to us directly, automatically, without a doubt, without any questions. And that's also why our laws, which is Moroccan laws and treaties and such, is the supreme law of the land. All of international law is based on Moroccan treaties, Moroccan law. Affirming further that all doctrines, policies, and practices based on or advocating superiority of peoples or individuals on the basis of national origin or racial, religious, ethnic, or cultural differences are racist. They're talking to the United States. Scientifically false, legally invalid, morally condemnable, and socially unjust. It is condemnable. That's a strong word. It is morally condemnable. So if you're practicing policies of that advocate superiority over people, right, based on their racial, religious, or ethnic or cultural differences, those policies would then become or are racist, scientifically false, legally invalid, and it's condemnable. Which means what? If it's condemnable, that means that we can take them to court for these charges. And isn't the United States infamous for practicing these principles, these policies, these doctrines? They don't stand a chance in court against us. The checkmate is already there, is already there in the horizon. It's just a matter of playing out the game. You can't jump to the checkmate. You got to play it out. Reaffirming that indigenous peoples, or reaffirming that Moors, in the exercise of their rights, should be free from discrimination of any kind. We are exercising our rights to self-determination and establishing our state governments. In so doing, we are free from discrimination of any kind. Concerned that Moors have suffered from historic injustices. You see how they have it coded as indigenous peoples? Concerned that Moors have suffered from historic injustices as a result of inter alia, their colonization and dispossession of their lands. I mean, come on, brothers and sisters, mothers and sons. This document is about us. Territories and resources. What resources? Our gold, silver, copper, oil, etc. Thus preventing them from exercising, in particular, their right to development in accordance with their own needs and interests. Recognizing the urgent need to respect and promote the inherent rights of indigenous peoples, which derive from their political, economic, and social structures, inform their cultures, spiritual traditions, histories, and philosophies, especially their rights to their lands, territories, and resources. Obama signed this document. And you see, when you read it, and you read it with the proper forensics and the proper concept, all you got to do really is replace the word indigenous peoples with Moors. And you're talking about yourself. They're definitely talking about us. That's not to say that there's other people around the planet that aren't going through the same thing, but those same people across the planet are also Moors. What kind of Moors? Well, you got Portuguese Moors, French Moors, German Moors, British Moors, right? All the Moors in Alkebulan, Brazilian Moors, Dominican Moors, Jamaican Moors, a compound state government. We all fall under these principles. So it's not just limited to us. But who holds all the power? The Moroccans. Yeah, I'm not saying that. That's just how it is based on the treaties and international law. Recognizing also the urgent need to respect and promote the rights of indigenous people, the Moorish peoples, affirmed in treaties, agreements, and other constructive arrangements with uppercase states. Let's read that again. Recognizing also the urgent, this has been an urgent need. This has been an urgent need, and they recognized it. They're recognizing it. Recognizing also the urgent need to respect and promote the rights of Moors, affirmed in treaties. What treaties? Treaty of Peace and Friendship, Treaty of Madrid, Act of Algeciras, etc. And agreements and other constructive arrangements with states. Welcoming the fact that Moors are organizing themselves for political, welcoming the fact that Moors are organizing themselves for political, economic, social, and cultural enhancement, and in order to bring to an end all forms of discrimination and oppression wherever they occur. United States, discrimination and oppression, United States, not limited to the United States, but we know what we're dealing with here in the United States with these people in our land. That's exactly what we're dealing with, discrimination and oppression. But how does that paragraph start off? Welcoming the fact that Moors are organizing themselves for political, economic, social, and cultural enhancement. AMPAG, New Mecca. They're welcoming us. That's why you deposit your ratified treaty with who? The Secretary of the United Nations. Because y'all said y'all welcoming us. Well, here's the documents and promulgate it to the rest of the world. Or put everyone else on the record via your, let's go back over here. You see what it says there? Ratification and signature. Actually 102. Someone has something to say? Oh, where is it? It's Article 102. Oh, let's see. Miscellaneous provisions. There it is, miscellaneous provisions. Article 102. Every treaty and every international agreement entered into by any member of the United Nations after the present charter comes into force shall as soon as possible be registered with the Secretariat and published by it. Registered, or you can also say deposited. They also use the word proclaim instead of using the word promulgation. It's all the same, semantics. No party to any such treaty or international agreement which has not been registered in accordance with the provisions of paragraph 1 of this article may invoke that treaty or agreement before any organ of the United Nations. So if you want to invoke that treaty, you have to do what paragraph or what number 1 of Article 102 says. And it says what? To register with the Secretary of the United Nations. These are the instructions. I didn't make them up. The other instructions are on 110, ratification and signature. The present charter shall be ratified by the signatory states in accordance with their respective constitutional processes. Where did they get that from? The Act of Algeciras. Because the Act of Algeciras also says that you have to ratify things in accordance with the constitutional process of your state. What do you want me to say? What you want me to say? What do you want J. Jermaine Bay to say? These are the instructions. You're just following the instructions. You buy a playground for your child and you got to put it together. I wish you would put it together without the instructions. You'll have the slide all upside down and the swing set be all crossed up. Then you have to do what? Undo it and do it all over again. And this time now follow the instructions. And maybe upon completion, you'll see the proper results. It's all about the instructions. You have to follow the instructions. Convinced that control by indigenous peoples over developments affecting them and their lands, territories. So it's a well-known fact across the international community that the land belonged to the indigenous peoples. It doesn't belong to France, the colonizing France. It doesn't belong to the colonizing British. It doesn't belong to the colonizing United States. They're all practicing the same thing, colonization, through what? Escheat and hypothecation. On all the Moors around planet Earth. French Moors, Portuguese Moors, German Moors, British Moors, Moroccan Moors. Convinced that control by indigenous peoples over developments affecting them and their lands, territories, and resources will enable them to maintain and strengthen their institutions, cultures, and traditions, and to promote their development in accordance with their aspirations and needs. We have our own needs and our aspirations, right? And the United Nations is convinced that allowing us to operate in such a manner will institute peace and security on the planet. The whole time that these European states, signatory powers have been in operation, it's been all dealing with a scourge of war. All types of wars, enslavement of different types. Moors right now, the NBCs are enslaved without even knowing it. So you think that you're free from slavery, but like Kanye said, slavery is a choice. It's just the same way you can allow yourself and your people, your nation, to remain enslaved. You also have the right and the choice to rise up. Now I do know there's a middleman there that's keeping us from doing so, and that's those who look just like us. Your sellouts, your Farrakhans, your Jesse Jacksons, your Sharptons, your Grand Sheiky guys and your Grand Governors, etc. In dealing with them, it is required justice. Again, justice is the scimitar. Recognizing that respect for indigenous knowledge, Moorish science, that's indigenous knowledge. Indigenous knowledge is Moorish science. Cultures and traditional practices contributes to sustainable and equitable development and proper management of the environment. Why? Because we have to take care of mother, who is mother, the land, nature, resources. No one else would have more respect for mother than the direct child. And who are the direct children? the indigenous peoples, Moors. The colonizers aren't the direct children, so they could care less. You know, all the pollution they put the land through. I do give them, you know, you have to give credit where credit is due. They do have their EPA and their OSHA and all that for the environment. It's definitely better than China. China don't have any type of regulations dealing with the environment. They're just tearing everything up. Emphasizing the contributions of the demilitarization of the lands and territories of indigenous peoples to peace, economic and social progress and development, understanding and friendly relations among nations and peoples of the world, decolonization, and also demilitarization. That's what this whole movement is about. That's what this international law and statehood movement is about. Decolonization, demilitarization. And how do you demilitarize them? By taking control of the military. What gives you the authority to take control of the military? Chapter 1 of the Act of Algeciras. We also have authority over the guns. That's either chapter 2 or 3 of the Act of Algeciras. Recognizing in particular the right of indigenous families and communities to retain shared responsibility for the upbringing, training, education, and well-being of their children, consistent with the rights of the child. Okay, so we have the right to that. So they can't just come around. They can't all this kidnapping our children and making them I ain't gonna say wars of the state, because all NBCs are wars of the state. But what do you call that when the adoption agencies? They kidnap your children and put them in adoption agencies. So it's been a lot of sick things that's been taking place with the United States. And this is what this document here will assist us in putting an end to the mayhem that the United States has been operating with, their policies and their procedures. Considering that the rights affirmed in treaties, agreements, and other constructive arrangements between states, the Treaty of Peace and Friendship, United States of America and Morocco. Considering that the rights affirmed in treaties, agreements, and other constructive arrangements between states. And notice they always put treaties first. And then they'll follow up with agreements and other constructive arrangements, conventions, etc., acts, but it starts with treaties. What treaties? Moroccan treaties. That's the foundation of the rights of indigenous people. They keep saying, this is the second time or third time that they mention treaties here, affirming the rights that's afforded to us based on the treaties and the protections that come from the treaties. Because what does the United States say in Article 6 of the Constitution? Treaties is the supreme law of the land. So why do I care about ecclesiastical law and theocratic law and how the temple was set up? The temple is not a state. And treaties is the supreme law of the land, not ecclesiastical law or any other law. Moors, you would say yourself that treaties is the supreme law of the land according to Article 6 of the Constitution. So why are we standing on any other form of law other than treaties, which is your treaties, by the way? That's how bad of a trick bag Moors are in. It's ridiculous. Considering that the rights affirmed in treaties, agreements, and other constructive arrangements between states and indigenous peoples are, in some situations, matters of international concern, interest, responsibility, and character. This deals with international law, but it has to be between states. So the United States has treaties with tribes, and they don't respect or uphold those treaties. Why? Because it hasn't been deposited internationally through the United Nations. Why? Because it's not between states. It's between a state and a tribe. And oftentimes, more than none, those treaties within those treaties, the signatory power of those treaties, the United States is usually the dominant, is dealing with the dominant side of the treaty, whereas the tribes and everyone else is dealing with the subordinate side. Meaning you basically gave away some rights. You gave away the land in exchange for a reservation. So when Moore said they don't respect treaties, that's the reason why they don't respect treaties. They don't respect treaties between them and tribes because it's not of international concern. It's an internal agreement. It's within the United States. So they do whatever they want within the United States. But if it's based on international concern, that means then that the treaty was concluded between states. And now we can start talking business because they're bound to international law based on our treaties. Considering also that treaties, here we go again, considering also that treaties, agreements, and other constructive arrangements and the relationship they present are the basis for a strengthened partnership between indigenous peoples and states. Considering also that treaties, agreements, and other constructive arrangements, and the relationship they present are the basis for a strengthened partnership between indigenous peoples and states. What is that partnership? When they say partnership between indigenous peoples and states, as it relates to treaties, what are they talking about? Treaty of Peace and Friendship, Treaty of Madrid, Act of Algeciras. Between states, the indigenous peoples, the Moors, and the states, the other European signatory powers. To break these things down, you have to understand the other part of the story. Acknowledging that the Charter of the United Nations, the International Covenant on Economic, Social, and Cultural Rights, and the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, as well as the Vienna Declaration and Program of Action, affirm the fundamental importance of the right to self-determination of all peoples. So if internationally they promote the right to self-determination, then within our state, we also have to uphold the right to self-determination, which is the reason why AMPAG, speaking for AMPAG specifically, we don't have restrictions. You know, whatever religion you practice, that's your personal business. You have the right to self-determination, as long as it's not dealing with human and children sacrifice, satanic, demonic stuff. It has to be in line with love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice. Me and the good brother Emmanuel we're discussing homosexuality, right? You know, gay people have the right to self-determination. If they want to be with someone of the same sex, you be with this person of the same sex. But there is a limit to that as well. The whole transgender thing, we're not rolling with that. But you know, if you're born in you know with homosexual tendencies, you know, as long as you don't bother anyone or try to encroach on anyone's rights, then I mean, you do as you see fit with your life. I mean, we don't have the right to take away anyone's birthright. So it's not fair to, I guess you might say it's not fair to say that the so-called transgenders as well, but see, what they would need to do also is undertake some form of rehabilitation. And the reason why I'm pointing that out is because that's absolutely based on an agenda. That's absolutely based on choice because of the agenda that's being pushed upon us by the United States. So someone has something to say? If you have anything to say, just say it. So yeah, we all have the right to self-determination, but at the same time, certain things are just not acceptable. So you would need to seek counsel for that if you want to gain access, to your estate or your trust, right? Your trust funds. Or maybe we can discuss something in the future where we can find a way to deal with that in a much more righteous manner. But the point is that I'm making is that, you know, whatever your religion is, whatever organization you're with, whatever, it doesn't really matter. It's all about self-determination. However, in the oath of allegiance, you do denounce your allegiance to any secret potentate or secret society, any potentate, secret society, etc. So you can't be in here, you can't be a Freemason, you know, and think you'll be a part of the state. You'd have to denounce that, right? But aside from those things, we do, you know, we do uphold and adhere to the right to self-determination for all peoples. Okay, by virtue of which they freely determine their political status and freely pursue their economic, social, and cultural development, bearing in mind that nothing in this declaration may be used to deny any peoples their right to self-determination, exercise in conformity with international law. See, so according to this paragraph alone, I don't know if it would even be right for us to turn around a transgendered person. They have their right, whatever, you know, regardless on the reasons for whatever, you know, they still have the right to self-determination. So it says here, in bearing in mind that nothing in this declaration may be used to deny any peoples their right to self-determination, exercised in conformity with international law. International law doesn't say anything about no homosexuality, right? And we don't have laws that says no homosexuality. But our people need we need some rehab, a deprogram. We need a deprogramming process for our people when they come into the state, because we're coming into the state with many baggages. And the whole thing about homosexuality is not the only baggage. You've got crackheads out there, you know, drug addicts, right? You've got killers out there, people that are gangbangers, and all these negative things that require some form of rehabilitation from the ills of the cares of the world that was imposed upon us from the Americans through their jurisdiction known as America, the Americans, the foreign Americans, in the cares of the world that's imposed upon us by their jurisdiction, upon who? The Moroccans, two distinct separate peoples. Moroccans, Americans, we're not the same. Therefore, we're not Moorish Americans. Convinced that the recognition of the rights of indigenous peoples in this declaration will enhance harmonious and cooperative relations between the state and indigenous peoples based on principles of justice, democracy, respect for human rights, not civil rights, human rights, non-discrimination, and good faith. Encouraging states, uppercase states, to comply with and effectively implement all their obligations as they apply to indigenous peoples under international instruments, in particular, those related to human rights, in consultation and cooperation with the peoples concerned, in consultation and cooperation, i.e. friendly relations, i.e. diplomatic relations, right? Emphasizing that the United Nations has an important and continuing role to play in promoting and protecting the rights of Moorish peoples, of the Moors, of indigenous peoples. Believing that this declaration is a further important step forward for the recognition, promotion, and protection of the rights and freedoms of indigenous peoples, and in the development of relevant activities of the United Nations system in this field. Recognizing and affirming that indigenous individuals, Moors, are entitled without discrimination to all human rights recognized in international law. So we have to enforce that. But we can't enforce that as individuals, we have to enforce that as states. So because the word individual is in here, a lot of Moors think that they can do this as an individual. And I don't know why Moors want to stand on that. Why do you even want to believe that? It's better, it's always better to operate as a state. Why you want to operate as an individual? No other national on planet Earth operate as individuals. They have all consented either through birth or otherwise to another state. They're all part of a state. They're all part of a nation. The only people that are stateless around here are the Moors. And they want to continue on, they want to keep making excuses to be stateless by saying, oh, we can do this as individuals. What do they call self-executing treaties is what they try to stand on. Oh, the treaties are self-executing. No, it's based on states. You have to be part of a state to even begin executing anything. And it's not done by you, the national, it's done by your government officials. Recognizing and reaffirming that indigenous individuals are entitled without discrimination to all human rights, recognized in international law, and that indigenous peoples possess collective rights which are indispensable for their existence, well-being, and integral development as peoples. Recognizing, let me blow this up a little bit more, just in case you might not be seeing it. Recognizing and affirming that indigenous individuals are entitled without, oh, I already read that. Recognizing that situations of indigenous, recognizing that the situation of indigenous peoples varies from region to region and from country to country, and that the significance of national and regional particularities and various historical and cultural backgrounds should be taken into consideration. Solemnly proclaims the following United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples as a standard of achievement to be pursued in a spirit of partnership and mutual respect. So we have to operate with the colonizers, the United States, in partnership and mutual respect, i.e. in peace and friendship. Okay, that's why we have to approach this thing. We have to, when we come into this, we have to come into it in the spirit of love instead of hate. Love is a higher wisdom than hate. And if you cannot be in the spirit of hate and uphold the treaty of peace and friendship. In order to maintain peace and friendship, you have to be in the spirit of love. Meaning that you'd have to forget about it, about the whole so-called slavery thing and all the injustices that we dealt with as a people. Keeping in mind and remembering that we started this because we were the first enslavers of these people. We oppressed these people for much longer than they have done us. So we're even. Let bygones be bygones. Let's get back to the treaty. Where's your rent? Where's your taxes? Let's catch up with that.
That's funny.
But that's what it is, good brothers. That's what it is. Article 1, indigenous peoples have the right to the full enjoyment as a collective or as individuals of all human rights. We're doing it as a collective. And we also enjoy it as individuals. Both when you have a state. That's what it's about, statehood. Indigenous peoples have the right to the full enjoyment as a collective or as individuals of all human rights and fundamental freedoms as recognized in the Charter of the United Nations, the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, and international human rights law, i.e. just cogence, preemptory norms of international law. Up to this point, now that we've started with the articles, we read the whole annex or the preamble. We also read Article 1 of the Charter. Have I said or read anything dealing with enslaving all of humanity and putting them in FEMA camps? Have I read anything like that? You know, I think it's safe to say that I've been reading the exact opposite of that. So where do we get this thing about, oh, they're the Rothschilds and the Illuminati and the New World Order, and they're gonna all put us in, my goodness. We ate that up, but in hindsight, those were conspiracy theories. So the people who said that, yeah, that's a conspiracy theory, apparently they turned out to be right. And it's not to say that some things wasn't true, but for the most part, it was BS. It was misinformation. It was a misguidance to keep us away from these documents, from these treaties, from international law, from these conventions, from these arrangements. Article 2, indigenous peoples, Moors, and individuals are free and equal. So you see how they differentiate. Ben, you again. Put yourself on mute, man. You see how they differentiate indigenous peoples from everybody else, or Moors from everybody else? indigenous peoples, and individuals, right, are free and equal to all other peoples and individuals, and all peoples and individuals, and have the right to be free from any kind of discrimination and the exercise of their rights, particular that based on their indigenous origin or identity. Obama signed this. Now, the United States internally, they didn't ratify it. So internationally, the United States of America signed it. Internally, the United States, two different legal personalities, two different ideas. The United States didn't sign it, didn't ratify it, because when you sign or see to a particular treaty, document, or convention, or whatever, right? Internally, your state must ratify, should I say, make legislation, ratify it and make legislation in harmony with it. The United States haven't done it, but it doesn't matter. It's still the United States of America as the proper signatory power signed this document, which still puts the United States on the hook for it. They're obligated to this. Article 3, indigenous peoples have the right to self-determination. By virtue of that right, they freely determine their political status and freely pursue their economic, social, and cultural development. We get to freely determine our political status. What is our political status? Moroccan nationals. How do you establish your political status? Through your state government. The state government recognizes your political status. Not you as an individual telling the colonizers, oh, I'm a Moorish American, I'm a Moroccan, whatever. No, where's the documents, the emanating documents that show and prove what's coming out of your mouth? Just the bottom line. You can't just say, oh, I didn't kill that person. Okay, that's great. I'm glad that you feel that way. Where's the evidence to show and prove that you didn't kill that person? All court cases deal with evidence, not hearsay, not what comes out of your mouth. You got to have evidence, documents, things to show and prove what it is that you're saying. I did not rape that girl. Okay, great. Where is the evidence? Whatever charges is being brought up against you, you got to have the evidence to show and prove otherwise in order for you to be found innocent. That's just the bottom line. That's how law works. So why do Moors think that they can just say something? And when we talk about the emanating documents, it's got to be competent, legit documents, not just some written affidavit that you downloaded from RV Bay publication. It's got to come from your state, not a website or an organization. Nobody else in the world operates that way. It's only Moors that operate through websites and clubs and organizations and associations and temples. It's beyond me why we do that. It's egregiously incompetent. Keeping in mind, I did partake in those processes, so I know what I'm talking about. Article 4, indigenous peoples in exercising their right to self-determination have the right to autonomy. AMPAG is autonomous, totally separate from the United States. We're not registered through the Secretary of State. We don't have a charter with the Secretary of State. We are absolutely autonomous, sovereign, and independent. That's an organic government. That's a de jure government. Anything else other than that is a subjugation. If you're registered under them or you're using their charter, you're getting permission from them, you're in the subject status, which means you don't have the right to self-determination. They tell you what to do. If they wake up tomorrow and say, okay, we're gonna shut this down for you, what you gonna do? We have the right to autonomy though, or self-government in matters relating to their internal and local affairs, as well as ways and means for financing their autonomous functions. What's our ways and means for financing our autonomous functions? The Act of Algeciras. In case anyone had that question, The Act of Algeciras give us the ways and means for financing our autonomous functions. So you have to check the boxes to get there. Doesn't happen overnight. Article 5, indigenous peoples have the right to maintain and strengthen their distinct political. So we have the right to maintain and strengthen our distinct political, legal, economic, social, and cultural institutions. So in our political institution, the distinct nature of our political institution is, for example, we don't say president, right? We say Wazir al-Rais, Wazir al-Rais. We don't say the legislator, or should I say, let me rephrase that. We don't say Congress. We say the Dalil Aziz, Matriarchal Council. We don't see, we don't say Supreme Court Justice. We say Qazi, right? That's our distinct political, that's based in our distinct political institutions. We have the right to that, while retaining their right to participate fully, if they so choose, in the political, economic, social, and cultural life of the uppercase state. And then, once all these things have been established by the indigenous peoples, the Moors, then it says, Article 6, every indigenous individual has the right to a nationality. Why is that? Because we're not crayons. We're not black, white, blue, yellow, none of that. They call the Asians yellow. What do they say? I'm Korean, I'm Chinese, I'm Japanese, etc. They use nationality. So if I were to say, if I were to call out some of the nations in connection with their nationality, it would sound like China, Chinese, Korea, Koreans, Brazilians, Brazil, Panamanians, Panama, Nigerians, Nigeria, Puerto Ricans, Puerto Rico, Spanish or Spaniards, Spanish, Spain, Germans, Germany, blacks, what goes with black? What goes with black? White.
Black.
What goes with white? So what you're gonna say, American, America? You're better off saying Cherokee. At least Cherokee will be linked to quote unquote America. But even that's not a nationality, it's a tribe. So what I just did was call out nations and the people of the nations, right? Their nationality. Well, if I were to say Morocco, then you would say Moroccan, or you would say more. You see the missing link that we've been living with all these years? We've been black for all these years and they've been white for all these years, but they are not white and we're not black. Even if you were to look at it from a color perspective, we're more copper colored, right? Brownish, several various shades of brown. Nobody is like the shirt I got on is black. I mean, I guess you got some people that are like black like this. I don't know, Seal. I don't know if y'all remember Seal, the singer. He's pretty dark, but you know, we're not black. He's still not black. The car is black and they're not white. They're like peach or something. If you want to look at color, pink, peach. What's white? This is white. The cat, this cat is white. Nobody don't look like that. It's egregious. It's egregious. And we love, and the term black is not what it always was. At one point, it was Negro. It was Negro first before it was black. But then Negro and black is the same thing. So it was Negro when James Brown came out saying, I'm black and I'm proud. Then it became black. And then in the late 80s or so, late 80s, maybe early 90s, Jesse Jackson came with his African-American crap. And then throughout the time, a smaller group of people who are of the same descendancy were calling themselves Moorish Americans, all of which are misnomers, or none of those, because you won't find any of those names or any of those designations in any of the treaties or in any international law document, or even the United States legislation. Which you see native Moors, Moroccans, you even see Muslim subjects, Moroccan subject, Moorish subjects. When they address us in our proper status, they call us governments, Sharifian authorities and Moroccan governments and Moxons, etc. Article 7.1, indigenous individuals have the right to life, physical and mental integrity, liberty, and security of person. 2, indigenous peoples have the collective right to live in freedom, peace, and security as distinct peoples and shall not be subjected to any act of genocide. That's why Ukraine is going after Russia with the charges of genocide. When we go after the United States, that's going to be the main charge, is genocide. Why? Because it's condemnable according to the annex. It's condemnable. So let's roll with that. Trust me, the charges are the charges are long, is like a mile long. We can say kidnapping, we can say human trafficking, we can say so many different things. You know, we can say identity theft, all types of stuff. Genocide is the worst one because it's morally condemnable. Or any other act of violence, including forcibly removing children of the group to another group. This is a practice by the United States. And the new practice is to forcefully remove children from their parents to give it to homosexual adopting parents. It's ugly what's going on out here, y'all. Article 8.1, indigenous peoples and individuals have the right not to be subjected to forced assimilation or destruction of their culture. Now, when you see the terms individuals, like you see here, indigenous peoples and individuals, they still have to be part of a state, meaning that an individual cannot enforce these principles just because you say, okay, well, it says individuals. No, it's individuals, but based as individuals within your state. They still would have to fall under the protection of a state. Because these articles only deal with states.
And when it says individuals, they're referring to, it could happen to one person.
Correct.
Several people.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And also, by the way, it's making a distinction between indigenous peoples and other types of peoples. So you got indigenous peoples and individuals. Who are the individual? The indigenous peoples are the Moors, the melanated peoples of the earth, and the individuals are everybody else. Meaning that everybody got these rights, not just indigenous peoples, because it's dealing with just cogents, preemptory norms of international law, human rights and state rights. Those are next to the treaty. That's the higher form of international law, is dealing with just cogents. In fact, just cogents may even supersede treaties because you can't put together a treaty that violates the rights of any human being or their states. If it violates the preemptory norms of international law, then it has no judicial standing. And so all the old treaties that we've put together, none of those treaties is based on equality, right? Economic liberty without any inequality. It's all about quality. Everything must be done in like manner. That's why in the Treaty of Peace and Friendship, you'll see that the United States was afforded or given the temporarily, what's that called? The most favored nation clause. Because in like manner, Spain and Great Britain and other European nations had that right as well. So it was afforded back to the United States. Benjamin Hardy, mute your line, please. Benjamin Hardy. So it says too, so states shall provide effective mechanisms for prevention of and redress for any action which has the aim or effect of depriving them of their integrity as distinct peoples or of their cultural values or ethnic identities. B, any action which has the aim or effect of dispossessing them of their lands, territories, and resources. I mean, it doesn't get more clearer than this. So how much of the devil was the United Nations after all? See, they were, see, this is what's called fellowship instead of scholarship. So when I'm listening to Jordan Maxwell, David Icke, and all these people that was pumping this information, I didn't do my own research to go read what the treaty or what the United Nations had to say about themselves. I'm listening to what somebody else said about them and running crazy with it. You have to be, that's why it's so important for you to be in the spirit of scholarship. Go do your own research and read what they are putting out there. If I read if you were to go back to the Secret Treaty of Verona, it doesn't say anything nice in there, right? It's about colonizing the people. When you read this, it doesn't say anything about colonizing the people. It says everything. It has everything to do with decolonizing and demilitarization. You have to do your own research and read the documents and not just take people's word for stuff just because their name might be famous or they may be whatever. And now, don't get me wrong, Jordan Maxwell gave us a lot of good jewels. I think he was the first person to go into admiralty law and the straw man and the all caps name and all that kind of stuff. But the United Nations has anything that does not have anything to do with FEMA camps. In fact, it has been created. It's been created, and it's a push against FEMA camps and enslavement of humanity. C, any form of forced population transfer. See, there you go, which has the aim or effect of violating or undermining any of their rights. There you go, right there. I just said that, right? Forced population transfer. So that's when you're forcing the population into FEMA camps. Or what are those camps that the so-called Jews were in Germany? That so-called scenario. Somebody help me out. What the Jews were in? What's that camp? What they call that camp?
Concentration camp.
Concentration camps. They were forced into concentration camps, right? So this is warning you against that. Any form of forced population transfer, which has the aim or effect of violating or undermining any of their rights. It's saying everything other than what these people have been saying all these years. Saying the exact opposite. Any form of forced assimilation or integration. Well, they forced us into integration, did they? Because we were marching and praying and begging for that in the first place, being led by who? Michael Luther King, that everyone knows as Martin Luther King. His real name was Michael. Keep that in mind, in case you didn't know that. But he did say that he integrated us into a burning house. This was after the fact. He regretted it. Oh man, I have integrated my people into a burning house. Yes, you did, good brother. Yes, you did. E, any form of propaganda, so they can't call us sovereign citizens. They can't do it. What is this? Article what? Article 8, Section 2, Part E, any form of propaganda designed to promote or incite racial or ethnic discrimination directed against them, sovereign citizen, etc. So you can do that with Negroes that are wearing fezzes, that think that they're nationals, but they're not. They're actually stateless. They're ipso dromore subjects. You can do that with them, but you can't do that with us. We got legislations providing, depriving you from that. Not only that, but we got legislation. We're putting legislation together to strike the 14th Amendment from the record, because that was done in fraud in the first place. Article 9, indigenous peoples and individuals have the right to belong to an indigenous community or nation. in accordance with the traditions and customs of the community or nation concerned. No discrimination of any kind may arise from the exercise of such a right. Article 10, indigenous peoples shall not be forcibly removed from their lands or territories. Indigenous people shall not be forcibly removed from their lands or territories, nor relocation shall take place without the free, prior, and informed consent of the indigenous peoples concerned and after agreement on just and fair compensation, and where possible, with the option of return. So what does that kind of talk about? The whole story of slavery, roots, homicide. According to them, we were forcibly removed from Africa and brought to America, right? To enslave us without pay. In other words, no just or fair compensation, and without the option to return. According to them. That wasn't the rule, that wasn't the true story. And if it did happen, it didn't happen to all of us. It was a select few. Yeah, people were being forcibly removed from their lands here and there, and a lot of it was being even done by us. But you're not going to tell me that a handful of Caucasians went up in Africa and just grabbed 100 million Mandingas and just put them on ships and said, get y'all asses up here and let's go to work. Nah, that didn't happen. Article 10, indigenous peoples shall not be, did I read that already? Yep. Article 11, 1, indigenous peoples, Moors, have the right to practice and revitalize their cultural traditions and customs. Our fezzes, our turbans, our bays, our ales, the ales and the bays and the wheels and their ways, right? The turbans and the garbs, and that's our distinct cultural tradition and customs. No loincloths, no dashikis. This includes the right to maintain, and that's not to say that you can't wear your loincloths if you so choose to. It doesn't mean that you can't wear dashikis if you so choose to, but that wasn't our culture. That's what they pushed upon us. You don't see people running around looking like Aladdin other than Moors, because that's what our culture was. Everybody else, they be wearing dashiki stuff thinking that they're African, and that's one of the problems. More the NBCs think that they're Africans. They have no idea. They don't even know the term Moroccan. They think that's limited to the people over there in Al-Qiblan, Morocco, which are the light-skinned Arabs. And those are the people who steal in our identities, not the Americans. The Americans are the Americans. We steal in their identity because we lost and confused, calling ourselves American. I'm Aboriginal and Indigenous American. No, you're Aboriginal, Indigenous, and autochthonous Moroccan. This is Morocco, the rock of salvation. And you can't spell it without the word more. This includes the right to maintain, protect, and develop the past, present, and future manifestations of their cultures, such as archaeological and historical sites, the mounds, etc., pyramids, what's found in the Grand Canyon. We can put legislation together just based on Article 1, Part 1. I mean Article 11, Part 1, to force them to force them to open up the doors to the Grand Canyon so we can see Isis and, or should I say, Aset and Asar and Heru down there in the true Egypt, which is there in Colorado. These are immense immovable objects, meaning that they didn't move it to the Grand Canyon. It was always there. The pyramids, the tombs, the statues, you can't move that stuff. So if all that stuff was there, then what are you saying? Where's ancient Egypt? In Morocco. That's what this is saying. This includes the right to maintain, protect, and develop the past, present, and future manifestations of their cultures, such as archaeological and historical sites, Grand Canyon, etc., artifacts, designs, ceremonies, technologies, and visual and performing arts and literature. All that is more science. All that is more science. Article 2, states shall provide redress through effective mechanisms, which may include restitution developed in conjunction with indigenous peoples with respect to their cultural, intellectual, religious, and spiritual property, taken without their free, prior, and informed consent, or in violation of their laws, traditions, and customs. What's in the Pentagon? What's in the basement of the Vatican? What's in all these buildings? Much of which are Habu properties. What are Habu properties? Ancient Moorish buildings. There was stuff already in there when y'all came in, and it's still in there. So we give up the access, unhash that, give up the access. We're in peace and friendship again, right? So peace and friendship and diplomatic relations doesn't mean being, all soft and no, you can be stern and direct and straight up with them. Where's my stuff? Where's the taxes? Where's the rent? But then also, where's my stuff? Where's our artifact? Art of facts. Where's our documents? Where's our books? We want access to it all. Mr. Colonizer, Mr. Foreign American, let's go. Give up the keys. It's over with. So we could be stern now and tell them straight up as it is, because that's what it's going to be. We don't have to approach them all docile and, Massa, can I have my books back, please? No, sir. No, no. Where's my stuff? You tell them just like it is, man. And you start off with legislation on paper with the pen. Article 12, Part 1, indigenous peoples have the right to manifest, practice, develop, and teach their spiritual and religious traditions, customs, and ceremonies. The right to maintain, man, who are they talking about with these things? The Caucasian man ain't got no, they don't have no spiritual and religious traditions and customs and ceremonies. Not nothing that was developed over time through their own self-development. No, it was taught, all this stuff was taught to them. In the lodges, you see the story with the Flintstones. Barney and Fred, they'll get off work from their little construction jobs. They'll run home, really, because they use their feet to pedal but to drive the car. So you really were running, right? You get home, you go in the closet, you grab your fez with the horn on it, put it on, and you go to the lodge, you and Barney. To get what? Civilized. To do what? To learn these principles right here. The practice, development, and teaching of our spiritual, religious traditions, customs, ceremonies, right? That's what they were taught. The right to end government, how to operate government. That's why the prophet said he's going to leave them here long enough to teach us how to run a government, because we taught them how to run a government, then we forgot how to run a government. So to remind ourselves and to remember how to run governments, we have to go back and learn it from them. Simple. It's not rocket science. The right to maintain, protect, and have access and privacy to their religious, cultural sites. I just mentioned that. Was that the Grand Canyon, etc. All the stuff that's below the golf courses. You know, when you have the tee, that's a mound, but it's covered with the artificial grass as what? A golf course. But these are mounds that they turned into golf courses, y'all. And national parks, golf courses, these are all things to hide our cultural sites, our artifacts, etc. We be walking past it every day. We be driving past it, walking past it, be in it, and don't even realize it. That's how far removed we are from our culture. you know, you know more the history of the presidents of the United States than you know the history of the sultans of Morocco. I bet you any one of you can give me 5 presidents off the top. Bill Clinton, George Bush, Obama, Biden, Trump. Give me one sultan of Morocco, your government. Okay, I can say Sidi Muhammad. I'm stuck after that. We are far removed from our history and our culture. It's a shame. 2, states shall seek to enable the access and or repatriation, I'm sorry. Repatriation of ceremonial objects and human remains in their possession through fair, transparent, and effective mechanisms developed in conjunction with indigenous people concerned. Article 13, 1, indigenous peoples have the right to revitalize, use, develop, and transmit to future generations their histories, languages, oral traditions, philosophies, writing systems, and literatures, and to designate and retain their own names for communities, places, and persons. That hits home. Y'all want me to read it again? Let's read it again. Indigenous peoples have the right to revitalize, use, develop, and transmit to future generations their histories, languages. See, we've been kept from being able to do that. That's the reason why we can't tell you who the Sultan is, except for maybe one. And the average person cannot tell you one, but they can run down the whole list of all the presidents. Jimmy Carter, Reagan, Roosevelt, Woodrow Wilson, Kennedy's, right? So then when you switch over to Moroccan sultans, you stuck like Chuck. What you gonna say? Some of us might say Sidi Muhammad, and that's probably where it's gonna stop. Then he has another name. It ain't even, Sidi Muhammad is like a nickname or something. I forget what his real name was. Right? It's ugly. Oral traditions, philosophies, writing systems, literatures, and to designate and retain their own names for communities, places, and persons. States shall take effective measures to ensure that this right is protected, and also to ensure that indigenous peoples can understand and be understood in political, legal, and administrative proceedings where necessary through the provision of interpretation or by other appropriate means. So the states shall take effective measures to ensure that this right is protected. So we will replace that and say, Allodium Orange Paradia, Monte, Georgia shall take effective measures to ensure that this right is protected, and also to ensure that Moroccan nationals of AMPAG can understand and be understood in political, legal, and administrative proceedings where necessary through the provisions of interpretation or by other appropriate means in accordance with our organic constitution. You see how you can flip that? Article 14, 1, indigenous peoples have the right to establish and control their educational systems. We've got a bill that was passed presented by the good brother Amaru Il Hiram Bey, which is the Minister of Foreign Affairs. In fact, let's go to it right now. Oh, look at that. I'm already on the legislation page of our website. So what does it say here? Right to establish and control educational systems and institutions. Let's click on it. This is it right here. Right to establish and control educational systems and institutions, be it enacted by the Dalil Aziz here assembled. That section one, right to establish and control educational systems and institutions providing education to a manner appropriate to AMPAG cultural methods of teaching and learning. Go ahead, AMPAG Gov, which I think that's Sister Story. You raised your hand, Sister Story?
No, I was actually clapping for the legislation.
Oh, Islam. I thought that was okay. That was a
Islam.
clap. That was a clap. Okay. I'm looking at things kind of weird. I thought it was the hands up. Thank you, sister. I appreciate the clap. Yeah. This is our, and who put it together? Right here. This is the name. This bill was submitted by Amaru El Hiram Bey, Hajib, Minister of Foreign Affairs. You ain't gonna get the only shine, good brother. I'm gonna give somebody else a shine. Let me see. Moroccan Plant Medicine Act, right? Moroccan Plant Medicine Act, be it enacted by the Dalil Aziz, here assembled that a decree to provide regulation of kif and opium this is in according with article, there it is. There it is. Inter alia, other sacred ceremonial plant medicine in conformity to the General Act of Algeciras 1906, Articles 72, 73, 74. Because in those articles in the Act of Algeciras is telling Moors that we have the authority and monopoly over kif and opium. Kif meaning marijuana. But in our state, we don't call it marijuana, we call it kif. Why do we call it kif? Well, because that's what the treaty calls it. So let's call it kif. To permit nationals 16 years of age and older to purchase and or grow kif, opium, sacred ceremonial plant medicine inter alia for their personal use. Now, of course, with these legislation is going to come other forms of control, you know, but this is the beginning. This is how you start. You put together legislation. It's the pen, it's the power of the pen. Charlemagne Colbert Bey, Sutra, Secretary of Defense. Right? No mandate for Moroccans. No mandates imposed upon Moorish state nationals. Be it enacted by the Dalil Aziz, here assembled that, in accordance with our own constitution, the law of Sankofa, one of the 42 declarations of Ma'at, in a sense, stand as the foundation of our spiritual, cultural, and social development. Number 22 of the 42 declarations of Ma'at, in a sense, state that not have I polluted myself, mind, body, or spirit. Our common law principles forbid the use of any foreign substances, such as experimental technologies, vaccines, synthetic drugs, inter alia, masquerading as a form of preventative medicine. See, if the law is not posted, then they can't adhere to it, period. Who wrote that? Let's say Mother Ashira Ma'at Tutin Bey, Dalil Aziz, Matriarchal Council. So all these bills were that were presented. It went to the Dalil Aziz, the legislative branch, the Matriarchal Council, and they deliberated over it, accepted it, signed it, ratified it, and then they sent it to me, right? The Wazir al-Rays or the prime minister or the head of state or whatever, right? And then my signature brings it into law. So these are our laws officially. There's another one, affirmation and trusteeship for this artificial person. This is dealing with your Nam Dagir, who submitted that. Let's see. That was submitted by the Qazi, Isaac El Mahdi Bey, Qazi, Chief Judge of Consular Court. And there's many more coming. These are just a few. All right, I digress. Let me go back. What was that? Oh, right. So it says, indigenous peoples have the right to establish and control their educational systems and institutions, providing education in their own languages in a manner appropriate to their cultural methods of teaching and learning. So this right here, so that particular article stands in line with the legislation that Brother Amaru put together. 2, indigenous individuals, particularly children, have the right to all levels and forms of education of the state without discrimination. So it's all about equality. There can't be any form of discrimination, not based on age, not based on gender, not based on race, all of which is morally condemnable, according to the annex. 3, states shall, in conjunction with indigenous peoples, right? So the United States shall, in conjunction with Moroccan nationals, take effective measures in order for Moorish nationals, particularly children, including those living outside their communities, to have access, when possible, to an education in their own culture and provided in their own language, which we would establish that for ourselves. That's all part of the bill that the good brother Amaru passed or presented, and the Dalil Aziz passed. Article 15, 1, indigenous peoples have the right to dignity and diversity of their cultures, traditions, histories, and aspirations, which shall be appropriately reflected in education and public information. Article 2, states shall take effective measures in consultation and cooperation with the indigenous peoples concerned to combat prejudice and eliminate discrimination and to promote tolerance, understanding, and good relations among indigenous peoples and all other segments of society. I'm still yet to read anything demonic, evil, Illuminati-like, New World Order stuff. Article 16, 1, indigenous peoples have the right to establish their own media. What's the name of this channel? AMPAG Media. This is the back office. Our own media, and then also, by the way, right to the following legislation are currently pending: establishment of a government publishing office that would be headed by the good brother Hakeem Bey, who, by the way, just happened to be the one who put this website together. Anyone out there who needs a Moorish website for their Moorish governments, give Hakeem Bey a holler, HakeemBey.com. That's the website. You'll be able to reach him at. He did an excellent job with our website. 2, let me see, where am I? 2, states shall take effective measures to ensure that state-owned media. Hold on, let me go back to 1. Indigenous peoples have the right to establish their own media in their own languages and to have access to all forms of non-indigenous media without discrimination. So we could have our own media and we can have access to all non-indigenous media. What is a form of non-indigenous media? CNN, Fox News, right? So we can have ours and we can watch theirs or have access to theirs as well. States shall take effective measures to ensure that state-owned media duly reflect indigenous cultural diversity. States, without prejudice to ensuring full freedom of expression, should encourage privately owned media to adequately reflect indigenous cultural diversity. So the CNN would have to reflect indigenous cultural diversity, which they don't. Or Fox News was the other ones. CNBC, all the alphabet boys of the media, Bloomberg, whatever. Article 17, 1, indigenous individuals and peoples have the right to enjoy fully all rights established under applicable international and domestic labor law. That's French labor laws, which officials of AMPAG, we got to have a meeting to discuss that issue that we've been having with the whole labor law, employment labor law thing. I got some information from the good brother Jay that we need to discuss. All right, 2, states shall in consultation and cooperation with indigenous peoples take specific measures to protect indigenous children from economic exploitation and from performing any work that is likely to be hazardous or to interfere with the child's education or to be harmful to the child's health or physical, mental, spiritual, moral, or social development, taking into account their special vulnerability and the importance of education for their empowerment. They need cartoons that depict them as real Moors, right? Flying on magic carpets and stuff. We need our own form of deprogramming to then reprogram, right? Because, you know, the children are just riddled with a bunch of negativity and slave-like images. So then you grow up as an adult and now you think that we're all slave and we come from slave and our history is slavery and our heritage is slavery and we don't know nothing about anything in the world other than slavery, which is just not so. In fact, we are the masters of slavery. You are the slave and the master. What you looking for? You're the question and the answer. 3, indigenous individuals have the right not to be subjected to any discriminatory conditions of labor and inter alia employment or salary. They can't discriminate against us. Well, they cannot. Article 17, paragraph 3, 2 and 3. In fact, the whole thing, 1, 2, and 3 deals with employment issues. Article 18, indigenous peoples have the right to participate in decision-making in matters which would affect their rights through representatives chosen by themselves. What is that? Let's read that again. What is that? What does that refer to? Indigenous peoples have the right to participate in decision-making in matters which would affect. How do you come to the point where you can now participate in decision-making in matters which would affect our own rights? Through representatives chosen by themselves. So I was chosen. Sayara Hastori was chosen. The Kazi Isaac Bey was chosen. The Minister of Foreign Affairs, Amaru Bey, was chosen. Consul General Mufti Lauren Watson Ali was chosen. Charlemagne Bey was chosen. The Sutra, by who? By the people, in accordance with our own procedures, as well as to maintain and develop our own indigenous decision-making institutions. This is all dealing with statehood. Let's read it again. Indigenous peoples have the right to participate in decision-making in matters which would affect their rights through representatives chosen by themselves. More's got to get into the mindset of statehood. We have to choose our own representatives amongst ourselves in accordance with our own procedures, as well as to maintain and develop our own indigenous decision-making institutions, i.e. governments, moxins, right? We ain't got no more sultans. The sultan, that whole sultan monarchy thing is dead. He reduced himself to king of Morocco and Al-Kibulan and left the whole empire wide open. And we are the successors. It's an open lane. It's a fast break, baby, in basketball, right? We got a fast break to the bucket, easy layup. And we over here marching and praying, worshiping Noble Jew Ali, instead of studying the laws and carrying it on. Worshiping everybody, any and all leaders. Martin Luther King has been worshipped. Malcolm X, Il Malik Shabazz was worshipped. Marcus Garvey was worshipped. Huey P. Newton was worshipped. The Black Panthers were worshipped. Tupac was worshipped. Biggie was worshipped. People worshiping Nipsey Hussle because he pointed out several books. And Nipsey Hussle ain't even from here. He's from Ethiopia. And he was a gangbanger. People crying over him dying. But how many people did he kill? How many people died at his hand, at the hands of his gangs and his gang activity? He did have the tattooed teardrops. You all know what tattooed teardrops mean. The chicken came back home to roost. I don't understand more as y'all be crying over these things and they worship, what's his name? My phone is ringing. Larry Hoover, free Larry Hoover. But nobody says free Mumia Abu-Jamal or Mutulu Shakur, which are actual political prisoners who literally put their lives on the line on behalf of the people and became prisoners based on that, not by assembling gangbangers to attack their own people. Then you go in jail and then now you change it. And you say, oh, never mind, it's not Gangster's Disciple, it's now Growth and Development. My apologies, I was wrong. And that's supposed to be enough to clear your karma of all the people that were killed because of your nonsense. We're just in a state of worship. We just worship everybody. We don't go into scholarship. Tariq Bey was worshipped. It's egregious. Article 19, states shall consult and cooperate in good faith with the indigenous people. So the United States of America shall, not, can or could, no, shall. It's a direct order, have to. The United States of America has to or shall consult and cooperate in good faith with the indigenous, with the Moroccans, or the Moroccan nationals of AMPAG concerned through our own representative institutions. You see, your own representative institutions in order to obtain your free prior and informed consent before adopting and implementing legislation or administrative measures that may affect them. So in other words, the United States would have to consult and cooperate in good faith with us to establish legislation or other administrative measures that may affect us, right? So we have to be in cooperation with them. We have to be in consultation with them. We have to send them judicial orders based on our legislation to tell them how they need to coexist with us, how they need to deal with us, how they need to treat us. So Black people have been crying for the colonizers in the United States to write legislation for them. Like right now, there's a legislation that's pending dealing with hanging Black people or something like that. And it's been hanging since the days of the hangings or whatever. Like, no, you don't depend on them to write legislations for you. You write legislations for you and you tell them what to do. We have to write the legislation and tell them what to do. If the rule is not on the table and if the order has not been given, they ain't gonna do it. If you don't tell your child to wash the dishes by 7 o'clock, he ain't gonna do it. Right? You're just gonna keep playing whatever Nintendo, PS5, whatever video game or whatever else he's doing, but he ain't gonna wash the dishes until you tell him to wash the dishes. Hey, Jay, you need to get up out that bed and come out here and wash these dishes before you go to bed. And sometimes you have to say it 2 and 3 times, right? Or you might have to say it 2 and 3 times to these people. But oh, you can best believe they will consent. Article 20. 1, indigenous peoples have the right to maintain and develop their political, economic, and social systems. Indigenous peoples, Moors, have the right to maintain and develop our own political, economic, and social systems or institutions to be secure in the enjoyment of their own means of subsistence and development, and to engage freely in all our traditional and other economic activities. We must engage, we shall have the right to engage freely in all these traditional and other economic activities. 2, indigenous peoples deprived of their means of subsistence and development are entitled to just and fair redress. Right? That's where it's our entitlements. What time is it? 9:27. I'll stop at Article 21. Article 21, 1, indigenous peoples have the right without discrimination to the improvement of their economic and social conditions, including inter alia in the areas. And by the way, y'all, if anyone is wondering what inter alia, it's basically like saying etc. But it's a term used in international law. In the areas of education, employment, vocational training, and retraining, housing, sanitation, health, and social security. States shall take effective measures and, where appropriate, special measures to ensure continuing improvement of their economic and social conditions. Particular attention shall be paid to the rights and special needs of indigenous elders, women, youth, children, and persons with disabilities. I don't know what they were talking about. I don't know what they were talking about. Oh, the United Nations is evil and they're trying to enslave everybody. They must have had a change of heart. The Rothschilds and them. Let me read one more. Article 22. 1. Particular attention shall be paid to the rights and special needs of indigenous elders, women, youth, children, and persons with disabilities in the implementation of this declaration. So they're re-emphasizing the same thing in Article 21. It's a re-emphasis. Why are they emphasizing on that? Because those are the ones who are usually under attack. The elders, the women, definitely the mothers, the youth, children, and people with disabilities. 2, states shall take measures in conjunction with indigenous peoples. You see, it keeps saying that the colonizing state shall take measures in conjunction with indigenous people, or cooperate with indigenous people, or consult with indigenous peoples. So that's the promotion of friendly relations, as we just read in the annex. Friendly relations, diplomatic relations. You know, no cause for arms. No cause for use of force. Use of force is outlawed, right? That's why we can't worry about what the United States may or may not do. They're not, it's outlawed. Espionage, outlawed. So if they did try to perform some form of espionage upon our state, that's just more evidence to take them to the International Court of Justice. States shall take measures in conjunction with indigenous people to ensure that indigenous women and children enjoy the full protection and guarantees against all forms of violence and discrimination. What violence? What is the forms of violence? Dealing with women and children. What form of violence deals with women and children? Human trafficking. They love trafficking women and children. I don't know if you guys are familiar with John of God. He's doing a bid now for, he had a farm of women that he would impregnate. Each woman was good for 10 babies. He would impregnate them and then sell the babies and do it 10 times for each woman. In other words, if you have 5 women, you got 50 babies right there. 10, 10, 10, 10, 10. Sick. And John of God was one of Oprah's buddies. She used to promote him on her show. So the women and children are protected against all forms of violence or all forms of human trafficking. The harvest was called adrenochrome from these babies. It's called SRA, satanic ritual abuse, in which they'll put them through all these rituals, painful rituals, several different forms of it, cutting them up or any and all things. The goal is to raise the adrenaline of the child, because what they want to do is consume adrenalized blood. It's called adrenochrome, and that's what they use for. It's like what they call youth serum. So drinking, they rape them. That's one of the ways that they increase the adrenaline. That's one of the tortures, is by raping them. It's ugly out here. That's why so many kids was going missing for so long, ending up on milk carton boxes. Y'all remember that? They're going after the adrenochrome. They're harvesting the adrenochrome. And they also kidnap the women, because women do what? They give birth. So they'll put them in these different camps and farms to force pregnancy upon them, so they give birth, and now you have a fresh baby to do what? Abuse, so that you can do what? Extract what? The adrenalized blood, which becomes what's called adrenochrome. Look up a movie called Fear and Loathing Las Vegas in 1997 is when it came out. Fear and Loathing Las Vegas with Johnny Depp. It goes into that story. They talk about adrenochrome in that. This is what the Epstein Island thing was all about. The world knows this. The international community knows this. So the United Nations, according to Article 22, Section 2, is preventing and protecting women and children from all forms of violence. All forms, which includes exactly what I just described, which is dark and it's ugly. And that's what Moors are here for, to rein in the order under love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice, and get rid of these behaviors. I'll stop at Article 23. Article 22, it's 9:30. I want to close out at 10 so that everybody have time to get themselves ready for the job for the next day or whatever they need to do. I think I covered enough information, enough pertinent information here to make the point clear that just based on this particular article alone, right? Protecting women and children, elders, right? Youth, persons, people with disabilities. I don't know what they were talking about. What were they talking about? What was Jordan Maxwell and Loose Change and David Icke and all the VHS and DVD Moors with all this Illuminati, New World Order is the devil? Where did this come from? Because if you read their documents, you don't see any of that. You may see that in the secret treaty of Verona, but that's why the secret treaty of Verona has no judicial standing. Why it has no judicial standing? Because it's a secret treaty. It's not because it's an evil treaty, it's because it's a secret treaty. And you can't have secret treaties. Everything must be for public consumption, public law. The secret treaty of Verona is private, private law, which makes it de facto law, which makes it color of law. Public law is for the consumption of the public. It's for public consumption. Any and all people can access that particular treaty and read that treaty to see what the treaty is all about. And obviously, if the treaty is dealing with any form of enslavement, then it wouldn't be ratified, it wouldn't be accepted. It would be rejected. Because the whole purpose is to promote peace and security. That's one of the reasons why we deposit with the United Nations. Because we're dealing with public law, so it has to be available for public consumption. That's why our legislation is public legislation. It's for public consumption. It's not private law, it's public law. Public law is common law, de jure law, divine law, right? Private law, not in all cases, but private law is, well, in all cases, it's color of law. I mean, but it's not necessarily evil, right? It's not necessarily bad. The Constitution and bylaws that the prophet put together is private law. But it ain't bad law, it's not negative law. It's private law because it's not public. Why is it not public? Because it wasn't deposited for the international community to be able to access it and read it. It's only available to the temples and anyone who's connected to the temples, or whoever may come in contact with them, or who might share the Constitution with the other person. But it hasn't been ratified, deposited, and promulgated. And that's one of the main reasons why we can make the case that the Moorish Science Temple of America is not a government. Or at least not in the de jure sense, but it's not because Act 5, Act 5 says this organization, there's no need, I don't have to read anything else. But I will, for the sake of argument. This organization of the Moorish Science Temple of America is not to cause any confusion or to overthrow the laws and constitution of the said government, but to obey hereby. This organization of the Moorish Science Temple of America. It's an organization. It's not a state, whether it be ecclesiastical or theocratic or whatever. Treaties is the supreme law of the land, not the prophet's constitution. Trust me, I honor the prophet, I respect the prophet, but I don't worship the prophet. I don't worship anybody. And the treaties predates the prophet. 1836, 1880, prophet was born in 1886. He was 20 years old when the Act of Algeciras came out. The Granada, the Treaty of Granada from Andalusia when we fell, that particular treaty, even though Queen Isabella and King Ferdinand basically conquered or defeated Boabdil, that was his name. I don't remember his Muhammad the 15th or something like that, but his nickname in literature is Boabdil. Even though he was defeated and he had to give up the keys to the kingdom, the treaties that was established based on that battle still allowed the Moors to maintain their political integrity. That's 1442. The Prophet didn't come into the picture till 1886. And that treaty is still in force. So I hope I made my point clear here. That the United Nations is not the evil trolls that everybody think that they are. At least not according to their own literature, their own documents, right? Which is based in well-settled principles and is followed and respected by all of the international community, to include 193 nation states, member states. I hope I made that point clear. Also, I hope I also made the point clear that we need legislation. We just went over our legislation that we need to enforce, right, upon the colonizers through consular court. The chief judge of consular court has the right judicial orders to send out to the colonizers, giving them orders in harmony and based in what the legislation was that the mothers put together. See, even if the sons put it together, the mothers will still have to review it and accept it or reject it. They deliberate over it. And her ratification of the said bill is her power. And then she sends it to her son so that her son can bring it into law. Who is her son? The head of state, whoever that might be. And then her other son, let's show who the sons and mothers are. And then her other son, Brother Hakeem, I don't know what's up, but for some reason the website does this. I don't know if you could look into that. Sometimes it's slow, sometimes it moves fast. I don't know why it's doing this.
Islam.
Come on. Yes, kind of like moving slow. Okay, there we go. It does that sometimes. So if we go here, ignore these two. You may ignore these two. They have been removed. This is the mother here. Her name is Ugam Kahani Bey. She's the Sayaraha story. So it says here, the Dalil Aziz or matriarchal council is led by the Sayaraha or speaker of the house. Executive branch. This is the guy that I keep messing with, Ben. This is Ben right here. This is me, the executive branch, the Wazir al-Rais or prime minister, the one who bears the burden of the state. Okay, but this right here is the judicial branch or the chief judge. This is Isaac. Look at him, looking all nice, all well shaved in his nice robe. You know, the Qazi or chief judge of consular court. Look what it says. Look what it says here. Executor of the policy of the matriarchs. They write the laws. I bring it into law by signing it into law, and then he enforces that law or interpret that law. Your holy trifecta, the three branches of government: legislative branch, judicial branch, and executive branch. You know, that also represents, that's also what Dorothy from the Wizard of Oz, the three cliques, also represent. It represents the triple principles: sovereignty and independence, integrity of domains, economic liberty without any inequality. But then it also represents the three branches of government: legislative branch, executive branch, and the judicial branch. Islam. With that being said, I yield the floor for any questions, concerns, comments. I'm all ears, good brothers and sisters. Yes, sir.
One quick comment for clarification regarding the statement you made regarding the Moorish Science Temple of America not being a government, in case there are any new Moors among us or listening from elsewhere.
Mhm.
According to the More Science Temple of America, whose website is moresciencetempleofamerica.org,
Mhm.
the said organization is listed as a religious corporation. You may want to keep in mind that the United States is listed in their own codes as a federal corporation.
Correct.
So More Science Temple of America has made it clear that they are a religious corporation. And furthermore, it also lists that their government is the United States of America, which is fine. Well, under the section that says our government, it says we are citizens of the United States of America. And in parentheses, it's U.S.A. So yeah, just to add a little bit of
Clarity.
a little bit more information first, for the sake of clarity,
Islam, good brother.
for anyone who may not be well versed in the Moorish information.
And I'm gonna camelback on what you're saying. Circle 7, page 67. I don't know if you can see this. The end of time and the fulfilling of the prophecies. You would find in on paragraph 4 that the prophet said, the Moorish Science Temple of America is a lawfully chartered and incorporated organization. Isn't that what you were just saying, Brother Hakeem?
Islam. One point of interest that new Moors may want to look into is the fact that Prophet Noble Drew Ali started off as a civic organization, but then
Correct.
I believe it was 1928, they incorporated their body politic into a religious organization. There was a reason for that, primarily for additional protections.
Correct.
But it's worth looking into for new Moors who are doing their due diligence and studying.
Correct. Islam, good brother. And that additional protection comes under what's called ecclesiastical law, which is why I make the point. Yes, there are protection based on that, but it's still subject to the United States laws. The treaty is the supreme law of the land, and that's just the bottom line. But you're absolutely correct. It did start off as a civic organization, and he veiled it, protected it as a religious organization under ecclesiastical law on the surface. But within the temple, it still is a civic organization. It's still supposed to be that till today, right? But it's been turned into, they really took that serious, the whole religious thing, and it has turned into the whole worshiping of Prophet Noble Drew Ali as if he was Jesus to the church, right? To the European churches. So we got our own Jesus for our Moorish churches, which is Noble Drew Ali. It's egregious because the prophet said clearly, do not worship me, study and carry on my laws. Thank you, good brother Hakeem Bey. Anyone else has comments? Questions?
Islam. It's Brother Joel.
Brother Joel, how you
how's it
doing,
going,
brother?
Good, I'm good. How's the weather down here?
And all is well, good brother. All is well, man. I'm glad
That's
to
good.
see you're on this thing, man. Thank you for coming.
No problem. I appreciate it. Yeah, I've been busy, real busy.
I understand.
Studying and keeping up with different things. Now, as far as the doors rule, one quick first point of fact. Now, how did your government get established? Was there elections, or how exactly did it come about?
We had elections.
The elections?
That's correct,
Okay.
sir. That's correct. Everyone is duly elected and others are appointed.
Okay, yes, I know, because some of you look at some of these organizations that just pop up out of nowhere, and if I'm not correct, is you have to have people elect people into position to give them that authority. It's
That's
governed by,
correct.
it still falls in the Constitution that the people consent is given. Government is started by consent of the people, so that still applies. Yeah, because that's the whole thing. Is there's so many different organizations and stuff out there. You want to make sure that you're not going from the frying pan into the fire, so to speak. And yeah, I hear what you're saying too about these organizations going under the different Secretary of States or whatever. Be
Yeah.
functional, they may be, but they still, and having 508Cs for like religious organizations, it's like, why would you do that?
Right.
Yeah. But yeah, I guess that's my thing there too. So now, as far as the doors roll, as far as because there's a same different paths to the same goal. Now, what about the whole birthright, taking back birthright? I know you guys say that you've pretty much taken back over that landmass, forcibly called as Georgia.
Correct.
Now, what about getting back birthrights? 'Cause I think that's what taking back what I guess what was listed on the doors roll or whatever that they made up.
When you talk about the Dawes roll, you're referring to the whole $5 Indian situation, right?
Well, not just that alone, because they mixed themselves into that. But there were some tribes that didn't do it and some tribes that did. So what is actually, like the whole thing is the supposed Cherokees and supposed Choctaws. So none made up. They were the ones were the true landowners and are grantors of any land grants or patents. So what's the objective of taking all those back and kicking these fools off? And I mean, you guys will be the example for the rest of the land masses in this in Mexico.
Well, those tribes that you mentioned, those are Moroccan tribes.
Yeah,
But they're tribes. They're not states. They're not governments.
no,
And
exactly.
and that is you have your tribal affiliation, but then you also have your political status, as you just read me or heard me read in the Rights of Indigenous Peoples, right?
For majority, correct.
Your political status is Moroccan. Your tribal affiliation would be Cherokee, Choctaw, Chickasaw, whatever, right? And so basically what I'm saying with that is by default, once we force decolonization, all of the lands that the Cherokee may claim or the Wachita may claim, it's all relevant. It's all recognized within decolonization, right? Through your state government. So I mean, it's our land. It's their land, right? Some tribes have designated land within Morocco, but it's not exactly recognized by the United States. It's being used by the United States, you see? So when we force decolonization, we can now, through that process, through that authority, we can basically, what's the word am I looking for? We can basically give it back to its rightful owners, who are Moroccans, i.e. your Washitas, your Cherokees, your Chickasaws, whoever, whatever. So we recognize those tribes. As a matter of fact, that's the beauty of the state ID that the good brother Hakeem Bey put together. If it loads up, I'm gonna show you real quick, and I think I've already showed it before, but there's a third flag on there, which is the tribal flag, right? That represents your tribe as whatever your tribe might be. Let's look at it from this other perspective. Let's look at it from a Negro perspective. So you got a black gangbanger who's a Crip, right? This is the third flag you see right here.
Oh, okay.
You got a gangbanger who happens to be a Crip. Well, his gang affiliation is Crip, but his political status is black. You understand what I'm saying?
I got you. Yep.
Yeah, same principle, same concept, but from a higher perspective. So their tribal affiliation will be respected and recognized, and whatever land that goes along with it, then that's what it is.
Yeah, because if you look at a map, taking a picture of a map, and you see the different regions where certain tribes were called their territory, so to speak, in that regards. So I couldn't go into that one no different than they could come into mind, so to speak. But I was going to next question I'm going to ask in regards to people of Caribbean descent. What's you guys moving? I mean, because I mean, all the tribes are one, but as far as I guess that's why I'm trying to tie the doors roll. How does that play out as far as, or is there any provisions for your government with that?
rephrase the question. I'm not sure I'm clear on. what
Sure,
you're
I'm saying like people from the Caribbean who come. Who,
Oh, yeah. Okay.
yeah.
So people from the Caribbean, what happens with them?
As far as that's what I guess I was trying to put the doors roll, because as far as ancestral genealogy,
Mhm.
how does that play out in this as well? Because like there's so many people who had different tribes and intermarried, and they had different relatives in different different parts of say Georgia or whatever.
Mhm.
How does that how do we all tie that in as far as
Well,
recognition of people from those as far as if they're there in Georgia right now, could they come and also take nationality with your
well,
government?
well, everywhere that you might see the word America, replace it for Morocco, right?
Okay.
So North America is really Morocco, North Morocco, South Morocco, Central Morocco, and the islands. All of it is Morocco. All these people are Moroccans, right? They're all Muslims. They're all Moroccans. And so by default, automatically, see, like the people in the islands are Tainos, right?
Correct.
This is what they call Tainos, but they're still Moroccans. And so they still fall under our authority and our jurisdiction, as well as our protections. So under international law, they still could be afforded the representation if they were to choose between the submission of the laws of the empire. Because we also got to keep in mind that a lot of those countries those are not the real names.
No,
right?
no, not correct.
So those are corporate names, which is the exercise of extraterritorial jurisdiction. It's the artificial grass over on top of the organic grass. So you have Puerto Rico as the artificial grass, but Borinque or Borinque is the organic grass that's linked to the organic soil, I should say, not grass, but organic soil of Morocco. Right? Same thing with Jamaica. That's not the name of that place. It's not Jamaica. I forgot what it's called. I don't know if Sister Georgine is on, but she could. Hakeem could tell us.
Yeah, Zamaka.
Jamaica, yeah, exactly.
Question regarding what the brother was asking. Is it essentially is your question in reference to how would we go about nationalizing our brothers from the islands or
Correct.
from South America or something?
Oh, that's the question.
Yep, correct. Thanks for filtering that.
Yeah, and if I'm not mistaken, there was something that you mentioned about coming here. So were you also including having their rights respected to travel back and forth?
Correct. Yeah. Travel free.
Okay.
Yeah, correctly. Because that's next to no visas, no, none of that stuff, anything like that. Correct. Yes, absolutely.
That's okay. Awesome question and great clarification there, good brother Hakeem. And he understood it from the perspective that he himself is Jamaican. Right?
Okay. So
I myself am Panamanian, so I'm not even from North America per se, North Morocco. I'm from Central Morocco, right? But to answer your question in terms of the travel back and forth, I'm still working out those kinks. I'm still learning that particular process. I'm not 100 on how that would work. And it also depends on what phase of the movement are we talking about. Are we talking about the full decolonization through economic liberty and economic liberty without any inequality, or are we talking about the second phase that we're currently in, which is integrity of domains, right? So if you're talking about decolonization, at that point, then man, we can make whatever laws that we want to make and allow our people to come and go as we please, right? But currently, as it stands, we're still checking the boxes of integrity of domains. So that question in that particular process, for me, myself as the Wazir, I'm not 100% clear on that. And I need to gain further clarity on that, even if it's for me as an individual myself, because I'm from Panama. And also we've got other nationals that are from, like the brother here is from Jamaica. Sister Georgine that I just called out her name, she is the consort for one of the Moors who's establishing the state out in Texas. She's from Jamaica. And she also asked that same question. So I got to find the proper answer for that. So forgive me if I don't have the proper answer at this moment.
No, that's quite all right. That's quite all right. Let's see if you could also tie it into the under the same UN right, indigenous people to travel.
It was still true. Yeah, it'll still tie into all that. But how? But see, the question though, we know that we can do it. I already know we could do that. The question though is how do you enforce it? See, it's all about
Yes.
enforcement. So
So if I could give my 2 cents real
go ahead, brother.
quick.
Go ahead.
So from my comprehension, the word control comes up a lot when it comes to all these questions, like who's controlling the ports, right?
Yep, good point.
Right. Right.
At this point, the colonizer is controlling the seaports and the airports.
And the land port,
Um,
the land
right.
port.
And so throughout the process of decolonization, we are going to have to give them, if we're not in physical control of these ports yet, we're going to have to give them some kind of directive to either respect certain Moors, whether they be Jamaicans, Panamanians, whatever, respect their nationality cards and travel documents, so on and so forth, as well as AMPAG nationals. Once we do gain control, however, it'll be based on our laws, right?
Legislation.
But for the time being, while they're in control, the only way I can see that going, like working, is for us to be given directives. Now, of course, just like the Wazir mentioned earlier, he gave a brilliant analogy regarding telling your child to do the dishes, basically.
Yeah.
Right. So we could give them a directive to say, hey, respect this person's ID, passport, whatever, they're going to be traveling, so on and so forth. They might not want to do that. You might have to tell them a few other times. You might have to,
Right.
take out the whip if need be.
Right.
Now, but another aspect of it is we already have a treaty with them, for recognition of nationality at sea. So I can see I can see us maneuvering via the sea because we already have a treaty with them, right? But we'd have to have our own ships, so on and so forth, and have, I believe, diplomatic relations with various nations in order to dock and whatever, All of these require additional research on our part as a state, but there are solutions out there. You know what I mean?
Awesome.
Awesome.
Yep. Go ahead, brother. And thank you, Hakeem. That was very well said, good brother. Go ahead, Amaru.
So is this in regard to travel? Is that the basic question?
Yeah, basically, yeah. Going back and forth between like from here to Jamaica or any other so-called foreign country, but within Morocco.
Here's mine. So with that point being said, the right to travel document that will be under review by the Lil Aziz will be put into force, internal law and AMPAG. But also the legislation that just got finished with the privileges and immunities that will cover Moroccan officials and nationals when it comes to travel. And the Wazir, we were just speaking about the last year passage, and that's that document that will allow you to travel freely abroad, foreign and domestic. Now the correspondence has to be made to these foreign states, and that will come from the Foreign Affairs Office. And after we get a few more things put together, that concern will be dealt with.
Islam. Islam Ajib, we appreciate you. Thank you all for chiming in on this discussion. So what Hakeem was saying is what Brother Amari was reiterating on. You got to give them directive. You got to tell them what it is. When we tell them what to do based on your legislation, right? So the legislation is enforced by consular court. And consular court is the highest court of the land, it's the supreme court of the land. Any and all disputes dealing between a U.S. citizen or United States citizen and a Moor gets settled through consular court. So if we have and keep it in mind also, by the way, that when we establish the central government, we also going to create our own, and AMPAG can do it at this point because we are absolutely independent from any other state, including AMPAG and New Mecca. We are literally a country of our own. State, the word state, nation, state, country, nation, it's semantics, it's all the same. So we can have our own, we can establish our own passports as well, a lot of which deals with correspondence with those various states to gain recognition for our passports so that we can pass through the ports. Keeping also in mind that we have control over all the ports, whether it be land ports, water ports, according to the Act of Algeciras. That's the reason why I was saying that it depends on which phase of the battle law we're talking about. Are we talking about full decolonization, which means now that the Act of Algeciras is operating at its full capacity, or are we talking about integrity of domains? During this progress or this process of integrity of domain, with the good brother Hakeem Bey and the brother Amaru was saying, it's really much more pertinent for the progress in which we're at currently at this time. But there's more to come down the road once we continue continue checking the boxes to force decolonization and establish economic liberty without any inequality through the provisions of the Act of Algeciras.
Islam.
You asked some good questions, brother. I
Yeah,
appreciate
you
it.
got to. You got to.
Keep bringing them. Keep bringing them, baby. Keep bringing them. We appreciate it. Is that it, brother? Is all you got? Who else got something else? Anyone else got something? Or if you still got something, brother Joe,
Okay. I'll drum some stuff in my head right now. Let someone yield for right now.
Islamic, brother.
So,
Well, that was a good question. I mean, I would even think that I mean this is our land. You know, we have the free right of what they call that. What's the term? Ingress and egress, coming and going to and
correct.
fro from land to land. Especially, it's no different than being able to like drive across the border from Georgia to Alabama.
Correct. Same thing. Exactly. Exact on point. You should have you could go from the top to the bottom, north to south, with
no restrictions, no molestation, no detainment.
Exactly. And I think, was it which one is it? 15? Is it 1508? I think USC is one of those that the nationality cards are only recognized form of identification. So as far as travel documentation to go anywhere you want to go, you shouldn't be hindered at all. He's rightfully said. And I think that's reinforced. And even the treaty, treaty of peace and friendship, which one is it? That states that no ship would be allowed free passage unless you're at war with each other. But other than that, they're allowed free passage to go through any port unmolested, and that should be treated with. Yeah, so that could be implemented in that regard.
Like right here, let me see. If any vessel of either party shall put into a port of the other, and applications or provisions of other supplies, they shall be furnished without any interruption or molestation. It also talks about, like I think right here, a signal or pass shall be given to all vessels belonging to both parties, by which they are to be known when they meet at sea. And if the commander of a ship of war of either party shall have other ships under his convoy, the declaration of the commander shall alone be sufficient to exempt any of them from examination. So what is the signal? Well, at the time, which it still stands today, would be the flags. So you got the Moroccan flag, and then you've got the Amity, the flag of amity and commerce, the banner, the red, white, and blue with the stars, right? That allowed them to pass. So now in today's age, that's one aspect that still stands, but then we also can use for example, the license plate on the back of the vehicle. That could be also your signal to pass, your state ID, your flags, so it all coincides, and it still has merit today in this modern day age. You just have to view it from a different perspective, because it's no longer 1836, which means people ain't running around with ships no more, right? You know, we got vehicles and cars and stuff. So yeah, go ahead, brother.
Another point to that is you're really going to have to, whoever the commander is, whether you're the commander if you're on conveyance or an actual ship or airplane or whatever, you're going to have to make sure you are competent and show them that, because they will test you. Because on one of their government websites some years ago, I saw that they claim that they no longer accept declarations, right? So the part of the treaty that talked about the commander's declaration alone should be sufficient. They're probably going to try to claim that's not the case, but you're going to have to let them know, hey, are you just trying to say the treaty is not valid?
Right.
You know, stuff like that.
Right, because it's
But
still in force, and it's still valid,
Right.
and it still stands. Correct.
So regardless of whatever kind of, de facto law they want to make, the word and the verbiage of the treaty is what we go by until it's changed.
Until it's changed. And the only people that can change it is the de jure Moroccan government and the de jure official actual signatory power, which is the United States of America. And furthermore, too, by the way, this is the reason why you want a bunch of legislation, the power to pen beforehand and enforce it through consular court, right? Put it on a record, let it be known long before you even partake in those types of travels. Because if you were to get caught up, you want to have so-called caught up, you want to have the legislation, the laws already on the books, right? So that now when they go back and do their own research, they will see that that's already in place. But more importantly, not only does it need to be in place, but it needs to be deposited or put on the record with them. So they need to be made very well aware of this stuff. And what they will do, based on the experiences that I have, that I've been privy to know about AMPAG, they will put things in the computer system that would serve the purpose in adhering to your ministerial decrees or judicial orders that's coming from your competent consular court, right? They will put it in the system, sort of like the do not detain list, right? Something to that effect, but from a more competent perspective, from the perspective of the sovereign authority, which is the landlord over the tenant. If that makes any sense. You want to put these things in place beforehand, if you understand what I'm saying with that.
Yeah, of course. You have to give notice. That's the name of the game, is notice. Notice the principle is notice the agent, and so on and so forth.
Correct.
There's point of interest with that. So the travel document that we have supports the national with that travel. And then there will be correspondence. You're right in line with everything. There'll be correspondence to them to let them know that these are the travel documents used, and then state the treaties, and then along with our legislation. For instance, Article 7 of our communities legislation that's being reviewed, it mentions that loading moratorium answer Georgia may issue a loading moratorium answer Georgia last year, past year to its officials and nationals. These last year, past year should be recognized and accepted as valid travel documents by the authorities of officials of state, taking into account the provisions of Section 25. And Section 25 states the application for visas or passports were required from the holders of a loading moratorium answer Georgia the last year, past year, when accompanied by an insignia that they are traveling on the business of loading moratorium answer Georgia shall be dealt with as speedily as possible. In addition, such a business will be granted facilities for speedy travel. So This is the legislation, but it will be backed by judicial orders, and they have to follow. But
Islam, good brother.
Yeah.
Appreciate that. That's my man in them. Go ahead, brother. Hakeem, I'm sorry.
No, I was just agreeing and thanking him for sharing that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that was. You see, this is what it's about. It's about statehood. It's about international law. It's about consular court, and in that way, and in that way only. This is what the ICJ told the United States. Everything has to happen through consular court, but you cannot have a consular court if you don't have a state, and you cannot have a state until you have a ratified constitution. So it's a domino of events that must take place, that must be established before you can get out here and start operating as sovereigns, right? Because we are the sovereigns, but our sovereignty is extended to us. Our sovereignty comes from the state. So when we come together, our collective sovereignty is passed on to the state, and then the state in return gives it back to us as individuals, allowing us to operate on our land and foreign lands under protections, treaty protections, and the protections of our international law under our own flag and treaty, flag and seal. I said treaty because the reason why that word came out of my mouth is because Prophet Noble Ali said that we need to worship under our own vine and fig tree.
Correct.
This is exactly what we're talking about. Your own flag, your own seal, your constitution. This is your vine and your fig tree. But the good brother Amaru, who was just speaking, he's doing an excellent job of putting together lots of, and it ain't just him, by the way. As I showed you all, there's a lot of other nationals within the state, brother Amir, Shalom, Sister Shira, etc., that are putting together legislation. Even brother Akeem is putting together legislation to establish another department within the state. So it's really all about legislation. Legislation is how we govern them. Legislation represents the rules, the house rules that they must abide by, that they must adhere to. If I fall into bad times and I need to move in with you and you allow me to move in with you, I don't write the laws. I don't write the rules. I don't establish the rules of your home. You write and establish the rules. It's your job to tell me not to put my foot up on the coffee table, not me put my foot up on the coffee table and tell you to go to your room. You know what I mean? Me take over your master bedroom and put you into the attic. These are the things that's been taking place with us due to what? One thing and one thing only: acquiescence, due to a lack of knowledge. So when they say that my people perish from a lack of knowledge, lack of knowledge of what? Self, and in the honor of your foremothers and forefathers, right? Because your foremothers and forefathers were not Black, Negroes, and coloreds, and they certainly weren't dependent on other states for protections. Other states were dependent on our ancestors and on our foremothers and forefathers for protection. The United States is dependent upon us for protections. That's what the Treaty of Peace and Friendship was all about in the first place. So they can't supervene the impossibility of the progress of our state. So they can say, oh, they can attempt, right, to or reject whatever article of the Treaty of Peace and Friendship, but it doesn't hold water. It doesn't have any judicial standing. We can hold them accountable for that because they're absolutely obligated to these treaties. And if they don't want to respect the treaties, let's see what it says in Article 25. If they don't want to respect the treaties, it says this treaty shall continue in force with the help of God for 50 years. After the expiration of which term, the treaty shall continue to be binding on both parties until the one shall give 12-month notice to the other of an intention to abandon it, in which case its operations shall cease at the end of the 12 months. So if you don't want to be here and you don't want to abide by the rules of Morocco, or should I say the Moroccan laws, then hey, either us or you can abandon this treaty. So you can abandon it, go somewhere. And where you gonna go? They don't have nowhere to go. So what is their only option? To abide by it, because they have nowhere else to go. They're all expatriates of their former countries, right? It's not just Great Britain. It's a culmination. America, the foreign Americans are a culmination of many different European nations who rejected their allegiance to their respective states. They came together to establish a whole new state. So it's made up of Germans, British, etc. Right? Some of which were even Moors, dark-skinned people. That's why you find the so-called black man, quote unquote, on the back of the $2 bill. John Hanson. I think that's John Hanson. John Hanson wasn't like, he wasn't part of the Moroccan government. He was part of the United States. He was one of the foreign Europeans who came over here with all this jazz. So we have the wrong misconception about John Hanson. He was the first president of the United States of America in Congress Assembly, right? But he wasn't part of. So if we understand that there's two jurisdictions, Morocco and the United States of America, and a black man, so-called, right, a melanated, an Asiatic man or more was the president of the United States, then that means that he wasn't a Moroccan. He wasn't one of us, right?
Correct. Once he's a praetor, that's it. He's part of the corporation.
He was part of them, you know. But it wasn't a corporation at the time, though. At the time, it was a de jure government. It didn't become a corporation until 1871 with the Act of Congress, in which the United States became a municipal corporation, according to their statutes. So at the time, it was still a de jure, you know, the United States of America Republic, that's the de jure organic government that's part of the treaty, you know, and at this point in today's age, in today's modern day age, the United States of America, just like the Empire of Morocco, both of them are in a shallow grave.
Correct.
You know, the United States Federal Corporation is what's in operation right now. And they don't have citizens. They have nothing but corporations. They call them citizens, but they're corporations because corporation cannot have a citizen. Walmart cannot have citizens. They can have employees. Right. So it's really it's a grand fraud. Is really what's going on. Everything is a fraud. They're based in fraud. And so eventually at one point, they're going to have to consent back. The same way we had to consent back to a Moroccan government or go back to Morocco, they too will have to consent back to the United States of America, the de jure organic government. And they're going to have to dissolve the United States, the corporation, which is basically already bankrupt and insolvent anyway. You know. Islam, good brother.
Islam.
All right. Anyone else got comments or concerns, questions, critiques? How you like my fez? Is my fez cool? I appreciate it.
Hey man, I'm just saying, as you know, I have to upgrade my fez because apparently the tassel's not right.
What's wrong with the tassel? And who told you that?
I don't know. A VHS scholar told me that my tassel was bootleg. So
the VHS DVD scholar, man, please, a fez is a fez. Oh my God, these guys are something else. These guys are something else. Oh man, yeah, their day will come. Let's just put it that way. Their day will come. One day, the power of legislation is going to allow us to force the United States and the FBI to relinquish and release all the names of the traitors officially. This is the power of legislation. They're going to have to release it. We'll know who the real COINTELPRO Moors were. We're going to know pretty soon. Their names will be on that list.
Not even are, was, but still are. Because they're still operating. That's how they move.
That's how they move. That's how they move.
Don't change the spots.
Exactly. Well, all right, it's going on 10:30. If anyone else, go ahead, brother. Go ahead. Oh, I thought you were saying something. Was anybody saying something? All right, Islam. Well, we're gonna leave it there. I keep hearing like someone want to say something. I guess it's probably because the line is not muted. But we'll leave it there. for everyone to go ahead and get their rest. This was an excellent build. I appreciate everyone's input. Brother Hakeem, Brother Amaru, Brother Joe Eel, and everyone else, Sister Story, and also Sister Makara. I'm surprised Sister Makara didn't have a little bit more to say, because usually she will have a lot. She will say what she got to say. Love that about the mother. But you all, they're coming close to completing the ratification of their constitution and putting everything together to establish their state. Same as the good brother Akil out of Indiana, they're coming together. Everything is coming together for their state, which is Maru State Republic, and Dimty of Texas. I want to give a special shout out to the good brother Jay Jermaine Bay, man. Keep pushing, brother. You doing an excellent job. Video 73s and video 74. Those were excellent presentations. In regards to, you know, giving out the information dealing with our sovereignty and independence, and the connections with France, etc. Why is it that we have to deposit our constitution and all of our emanating documents with the United Nations, according to the Charter, Article 102, etc. Amongst many other things. I can't wait for video 75 to come out. And I want to suggest that everyone on the line, especially the viewers at home, please always check out AMPAG study sessions if you're interested in learning about international law and statehood, and if you're interested in establishing your own states. This channel, AMPAG Media, this could be a secondary option for you, but the primary option for learning international law and statehood would be AMPAG study sessions on YouTube. So you all make sure you continue building on that, just as well as the nationals within the state. Please keep up your erudition through those study sessions and follow along with your own treaties. Pull them up, read them, follow along with the reading on your own at home, so that you can make yourself approved by studying and reading on your own. Islam. So with that said, if no one else have anything to say, I'll give you another couple seconds. All right. Well, with that said, good brothers and sisters, divine mothers and sons, we'll yield for the night, and we'll be back together again on Wednesday at 7:30. Peace and love, everybody, and may you all have a wonderful night.
Peace.
Islam. Peace and love. Thank you for your attendance.
Peace.
Peace, good brothers. Islam.
Peace. Peace.
Peace.